Hey guys, so if you guys still remember, I told my scary Milwaukee Hmong New Year experience about like a few weeks back in 2021. I'm still surprised and shocked that it literally blew up after I released it. But that aside though, I only told about 30% of my experience, and I never thought that I would be making a part 2 of it. But I thought I just want to share it with you guys, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoy my story though. So, a few weeks after the new year, I was still disappointed that I didn't place in a singing contest or a competition, but I knew what I didn't, so I didn't complain too much. And also, I found out that Chen Shong was one of the judges. Until this day, I still wonder what score he gave me, but ever since I met those two ghost girls, I have felt very paranoid and I have been feeling uneasy. I will always like keep the lights on when I'm sleeping and open my eyes to look around each time I woke up, just in case if I saw them. I also thought about telling my family, but being the idiot that I am, I thought it would just go away on its own. But one Friday night, I was still touching my computer as I felt a gust of wind pass by. To avoid scaring myself, I ignored it and assumed it was just the wind until I heard a knock on the door. Since I was home with only 3 of my siblings, I thought it was just one of them. I ignored it like always, but it kept knocking. I sighed and get up to go to the door, but when I opened it, no one was there. My room was in the middle of the halls, so I peeked out to see if any of my siblings were there, but none were. I just shrugged it off, thinking it was just probably them. I went back into my room and put on my earphones as I listened to Hmong music or songs. As I was singing along with the song, I kept hearing like a girl's voice singing along as it was echoing in the background. It was weird because I always listened to that song, but I never heard any girls in the background. But I just ignored it and proceeded to sing along. But the more I sang, the more I heard it. That was when I felt chills and took off my earphones. As I looked around the room, it was pretty much the same as it always is. That night, I went to bed. As my parents got home, there was nothing weird happening until I woke up in the middle of the night around 2 a.m. and I had to use the bathroom. After I got out of the bathroom, I made my way back, and as I did, I saw what appeared to be like a ghostly figure that was disappointing into the dark halls. The figure looks like a girl about as tall as my chest, with traditional Hmong clothes that look just like the 2 ghost girls that I saw at New Year. She had long curly hair and her back was turned to me, so I could only see her back like a few seconds before she disappeared into the halls. Since it was midnight, the house was very dark and I could only see like lights in certain places. Since I was very tired and my eyes was barely opening, I thought I was just been maybe hallucinating, so I went to sleep. About sometimes later, I awoke with my eyes still closed and I was half asleep, also half awake. It sounded like the wind was blowing outside around me. I moved my arms to my side, but it felt like someone was laying there beside me. I moved my hands around that thing and it felt like someone was wearing those traditional Hmong clothes. I could feel the coins. I moved my arms down and I felt the skirt. Immediately I felt cold chills going down my spine. As I froze in fear, I was too terrified to move or open my eyes. I kept my eyes closed and moved my arms back, hoping that the thing wouldn't hurt me. I'm praying for that thing to go away in my head. The lamp that I used for light was still on, but I put a piece of clothing over it so it wouldn't be too bright in my room. So my room was basically half dark, but not completely dark. I then fell asleep about a couple of hours later. The next morning, I went to my parents and let them know what had happened. They gave me a knife to put under my pillow and tied a string around my wrist. I didn't want to share my story with my friends at school because I didn't want them to worry much or think that I was just messing with them. I only told them a little, but I know that I shouldn't be talking about it out in public. I usually don't have any sleep paralysis or however you call it, but now almost every night that I go to sleep, I do have it, and I usually see 2 dark shadows standing there while just watching me. One night, I dreamed that I was at my auntie's house and it was nighttime. I was outside by the sidewalk, about to approach her door when I heard a familiar voice calling my name. I turned around and saw those 2 same exact girls from New Year. They were about a couple of yards away from me, waving at me. It was so dark that I could barely see their hair covering their faces, as their traditional Hmong clothes were the only thing that I could make out. Whenever I use the bathroom downstairs, I feel their presence around me, as if they were right next to me. My senses finally kick in, and I went to get help from a shaman. After the shaman did their work, he hopped off the table and went back to talk to my family. I sneakily snuck upon them to listen. What the shaman said, I don't remember exactly, but it was something like this.
This is bad. If we don't do something quick, then I'm afraid we won't be able to fix him. Right now, there are 2 ghost girls that are following him everywhere, and I tried to pull them off, but it wouldn't work. They are too attached to him, and they are desperate to take his soul. It would take a lot of work.
Upon hearing that, I could see my parents stressing out as I began to feel my heart beating faster than ever. Now I feel more scared than ever. Why are these 2 ghost girls so desperate for my soul? I have no idea. That night, my parents and I returned home. Because I was too scared to stay in my room that night, I had to stay in the living room with my parents. One of my brothers was the youngest among us, and he was still just a toddler. He got close to me, and I noticed that he kept looking at something to my left. I was confused because he was just staring at whatever it was without even moving. Suddenly, he began to cry and ran back to my dad. I got up and went to him. He covered his face and cried to my dad. My dad and I were unsure to what was wrong with him, so I went back to my room and lay down. Later, my siblings told me that when they came into my room earlier, they kept seeing 2 girls in Hmong clothes sitting on my bed, so they got scared and left. Although I was more scared than ever, I just tried to convince myself that they were just kids and they were lying to me. Whenever we were sleeping, I will always hear someone walking down the basement stairs. I will also have dreams like I was being followed. I will hear those 2 girls walking behind me, whispering to each other as they giggle. It felt just like New Year again. The shaman would do his ritual and everything to help me once in a while since he's so busy. My parents forbade me to go anywhere else, so I mostly stayed home, but as I stayed home, I became more scared. I had a dream one night that I was sitting down somewhere I couldn't remember. It was nighttime and there were only a few lights shining down on me. I was frozen and couldn't move as those girls were approaching me. They got closer and closer as they sat down beside me. It was surprising that they seemed so friendly and nice to me as they talked to me casually. I don't remember what we were talking about, but there was one thing that they said that I still remember clearly. They were just talking when one of them smiled and said, "Come with us. We will take you to a better place than this." Although I wasn't really myself in my dream, I told them no, and that I didn't understand what she meant. They were trying their hardest to convince me to go with them, but I refused to go with them. One of them gave me a sad look as I woke up from my dream. With each week's passing by, they grow more desperate. More and more, they reveal themselves to me. If I ever mention about getting rid of them or anything like that will help me, then they will show up in my dream later, being all scary as they chase me around. One night, I went to sleep over at my auntie's house. I stayed in the basement using my phone for a bit. Before I knew, I'd already fallen off flat on the bed. I awoke to what sounded like humming. My eyes were still half open as I saw one of the girls sitting to my right, with her long curly hair covering her face, still in her Hmong clothes that I saw at New Year. She didn't move an inch. I never felt more scared than ever in my whole life. I couldn't move or close my eyes. She was looking right at me as the other girl approached from the left and did the same exact thing. They just looked at me with a creepy, long, curly hair covering their faces, and their faces forming creepy smiles. It makes me want to panic and run away, but my body won't let me. One of them then moved very close to my face and whispered into my ears. I don't remember exactly what she told me, but it sounded just like what they told me before. "Come with us. We will take you to a better place." Just then, I woke up with sweats all over my body as I just woke up from another sleep paralysis. I then ran downstairs and told my grandma as she did some ritual and threw rice everywhere all over the house. That night, she made me sleep in the room with them. After that night, I never slept alone again. When I got back home, I will make my siblings sleep with me. The shaman is still trying his hardest to get those 2 ghosts off me as he would come over and do his thing once a couple of weeks. As well as my family has been protecting me and not letting me go anywhere. As usual, my parents left me in the house with my siblings one night. While I was on my computer, suddenly I had the urge for food. When I left my room to go in the kitchen, I noticed my siblings were staring at me strangely and backing off. It was weird because usually they would just ignore me or act like I wasn't there. But this time was different because they were just staring at me like they never saw me before. I went into the bathroom and do number 1, and as I went to go wash my hands, my little 7-year-old brother walk in the bathroom and ask me.
Who are those girls?
I look at him confused and said, which girls? He paused for a moment and said,
Those 2 girls that were following you. They were wearing Hmong clothes.
I felt my heart have fallen off my chest as I heard his words. I then quietly asked him, are they still here? He responds back with,
No, they left when you entered the bathroom.
I was frozen in fear for a couple of minutes before going back into the kitchen and grabbing my food. I then sat on the chair and ate my food that night. I experienced another sleep paralysis. My body was frozen and I couldn't move, but I could barely open my eyes as I glanced around and saw my sibling sleeping next to me. I looked up and there she was, her long curly hair covering her face as she was smiling deeply at me just a few meters from my feet. There was only one of them this time, and I could see her creepy eyes as she slowly walked closer to me. I screamed in panic, but my siblings wouldn't wake up. I wanted to look away and close my eyes, but I couldn't. She got closer and closer until she reached me as she put her hand softly on my chest. Just then, I heard my baby brother crying as she disappeared. I then felt myself waking up with sweat all over my body. My baby brother must have felt the ghost present too, and that's why he was crying. I gave my baby brother his milk, but he wouldn't stop crying. I got up and went into my parents' room as I told my dad to come and calm him down and sleep with us that night. I told them what happened the next day as they got more stressed and seek for more shamans to help. My dad decided to sleep with me and my siblings and brought some protections that fed off ghosts. My grandma came over and threw red corns all over my room. We went to my auntie's house and stayed until dark. I went down to the basement with my cousin and we stayed in that room as we looked at our phones as usual. Everything was normal until my cousin needed to go to use the bathroom and left me alone in the basement. I was too focused on my phone since I was messaging my friends, so I didn't feel scared or anything. Then I heard footsteps around me as I looked out the door and saw my aunt just standing there like a statue, smiling at me. It was weird since my auntie would never do that because we would always mess around with each other. I thought she was just trying to scare me, so I smiled back with an ugly face. Surprisingly, she had no reaction at all. Normally, she would laugh and say,
You stupid.
while laughing, but she kept smiling. I wonder what was wrong with her. That was when I heard my auntie talking upstairs with my family. Whoever that girl was, she was not my auntie. I closed the door and texted my cousin to hurry up and come back. After what felt like an hour, he returned and knocked on my door. We both went upstairs and told them what I've seen. It may seem like they didn't believe me and said that I was just seeing things, but deep down, I know that they do believe me. Although I thought I would never get better, the shaman actually managed to block them. It took about a month, and ever since that day, I never saw them again, not even in my dreams. The feeling of them being nearby was also fading. One day I had a dream that I saw them in the distance looking around, as there was some sort of white or colored thing in front of me, and it seemed like they couldn't see me. I have felt depressed and sad ever since that dream. Like the elders always said, ghosts and spirits can control your feelings and possess you, causing you to do things that you don't want to do. After all of these events have ended, I was finally able to return to my normal life, still recovering to this day. Their presence have finally vanished, but sometimes I could feel their presence again when I go somewhere. It's like I could sense it again, but for now, I just hope that they don't come back.